Hello and welcome to the Gag Global Challenge, and if necessary, destroy media narratives. I'm George Szamuely. With me today, of course, is co-founder of the Gaggle, Peter Lavelle. So, Peter, the situation in Syria is certainly very grim. We don't know the exact details because there's a lot of rumors on the internet. A lot of stories uncorroborated on Twitter. So we basically can't give a detailed prognosis as to the situation. But clearly, we do know that an offensive was launched by HTS, which is a derivative of Jabhat al-Nusra, which of course is an offshoot of al-Qaeda. It had been holed up in Idlib all these years, and they launched this offensive towards the end of last week. Much of Aleppo seems to be under their control.
If all of it, we
That's
don't
right.
know.
Exactly. But, we don't know the extent of it. And now they seem to be mounting an offensive against Hama, which is the southwest of Aleppo. And Bashar al-Assad himself doesn't seem to be around. I mean, he's not giving any kind of a televised address to the nation, which is what you would expect in the circumstances. There have been talk about that he's uh, been to Moscow. He talked to Moscow, but that hasn't been confirmed, or at least I haven't seen any confirmation that he has been in Moscow. And then the Iranian foreign minister is supposedly going to come to Damascus. Evidently, this is quite a I mean, Iran, Russia are taking this as a very serious situation, which of course it
It is.
is. Um, but what we can obviously conclude, at least for the time being, is Turkey was absolutely up to its eyeballs in this. Whatever goes on in Idlib is run by Turkey. So we know Erdogan had to have signed off on this, and
But the treachery of it all.
exactly the same Erdogan who had been making all these overtures
Wow.
Syria all this time about how he wants to, normalize relations with Syria, and Israel has continued to bomb um, Syria, and of course Israel is also a key player in all of this because Israel has been pummeling and pummeling on a daily, nightly basis Syria all these years, which has clearly led to a weakening and a demoralization of the Israeli of the Syrian army. It's also the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, that has had a presence in Syria. I think they've also taken a hammering from
Yes.
Israel all of these years. Hezbollah,
And,
we know.
and it's always been a bit of a sticking point that the Iranians have had with the Russians, okay? Because uh, there's an implied deal that Russia doesn't have Iran's back in Syria,
Yeah.
okay? And this is all part of the gambit, of course, isn't it?
Right. Right. No, I think it's a very, very important point. Something we should talk about is that by Russia adopting this kind of hands-off approach in this conflict between Iran and Israel, which has been taking place on Syrian soil, I think it hasn't done any favors for Syria because you could say it was unfinished business. I mean that the problem with that war was that it was unfinished business. They took all these terrorists and they dumped them in Idlib. They just basically chartered passenger buses and they took them.
Yeah, put them in quarantine, political quarantine. Yeah.
Right. But that's just asking for trouble. That in any time when you don't resolve a problem, you let it fester, and they clearly did establish a base of operations in Idlib, and it, they were going to use the right moment to strike. And here was the moment. Hezbollah is much weakened. Iran has also been weakened. The IRGC has been weakened. Russia is preoccupied in Ukraine. They made their move,
Yeah.
and so now it's a very serious situation.
Yeah, well, let's call balls and strikes here. I mean, many of the people that we talk to and even agree with in many ways has talked about the stratagem of the axis of resistance. Well, there's the other side of the coin. And then George has aptly described it. I mean, this they saw an opening and took advantage of it on a massive scale. If you told me last month, George, that Aleppo would drop in 3 days, I'd just say, "What are you smoking?" And I don't want any. But this is, and considering the amount of time you and I talked about Aleppo in 2016, I mean, that was a grind. Remember, it was a
Right, right.
grind to see all that lost in 72 hours.
Yeah,
Just it's stunning. It's absolutely stunning.
yeah,
And we don't see, again, it's so early. There's so many narratives that
right.
people are pushing, so many different countries
Yeah,
involved, non-state actors. They all got their own story. I'm going to be have a hands-off approach until I can get a grip on all of this. Okay. But it is quite staggering. The treachery of Erdogan is stunning to me, absolutely
right,
stunning. And
right,
that was kind of a linchpin that everybody kind of looked to the Turks. Their machinations in Syria are legend,
right.
but it appeared up until 72 hours ago, they had a vested interest in a unstable but recognizable status quo. That's all gone.
That's
Gone.
all, exactly. That's exactly right. There was this whole Astana process involving Russia, Iran, and Turkey. But all along, I think Russia and Iran were, at least in their objectives, on the same page. Turkey, however, was not on the same page. Turkey was always doing its own calculations. And presumably, what he wants to do is he wants to carve out a big chunk of Syria, um, deal with the
And,
Kurdish
and the
issue.
Israelis won't object.
That's right. That's right. I think that's what they want to do. Israel is certainly not going to object. They're going to deal with the Kurdish problem. They're going to dump the Kurds, far away from the Turkish border, and and then the Israelis will take their cut of Syria, in the sort of in the vicinity of the Golan Heights, and the Americans will take their cuts. Essentially, they're going to do a partition. They're going to leave Syria with this greater Damascus area. But I think that cannot survive. The
And
greater
and
Damascus cannot survive.
we have to put some meat on those bones. Let's go back to 2016. This is what the Brookings Institution was
Yeah,
pushing for. All of the think tanks and
right,
the Atlantic, all these people, all the think tankers, they were saying partition,
right,
partition, partition. They didn't have the facts on the ground at the time. There was too many moving pieces. The Russians got involved in September 2015, changed everything. And now that paradigm that they were looking for, or as I like to always refer, the roulette wheel. They turned the wheel and they threw in the ball and they
right.
got it. They got 00. It's activated. Do it now.
That's
That's
right.
exactly what they're doing.
No, I think that's absolutely right. I think that the Biden administration basically gave the go ahead. I'm sure Turkey, ran it by Washington. The Biden administration gave it the go ahead. Anything that weakens Russia, America regards that as good. So yet another chaotic situation that has fueled in Biden's last 2 months in power. How much more chaos can he create? But the problem, however, is that that Assad really doesn't have the forces, the constellation of forces that he relied upon, from 2015 onwards. I remember in 2015 he was on the brink of collapse, but he was able to call in his chips. It was Russia, it was Iran, it was Hezbollah, and they all went into bat for him, and that turned the tide. I mean, he didn't get his country back, but at least his government survived. He doesn't have that constellation of forces anymore. So yeah, he can, and the Russians can fly their jets and bomb, but that doesn't really turn the battlefield in your favor if you don't have the infantry to send in and take advantage of these airstrikes. And that's what so at the moment we're hearing about these airstrikes, but that's not going to tilt the advantage to Syria.
Well, what we saw the outcome of 2016 is Assad. You can always, it's a glass half full or half empty. He didn't lose the proxy war. Okay,
Right.
now he is.
Right.
Okay, this is all a continuation.
Right.
The 31 flavors of jihadism, it's just a different uniform, different commander, whatever. But we all know whose money, where they get the money from. They get logistical. Oh, and by the way, it looks like Ukrainian drones are there. Okay,
That's right.
so
That's right.
that's the new layer of this conflict that has been going on since 2011 with intervening secessions of hostilities. So it's really grim. I mean, as we're speaking right now, it's really grim. I mean, the partition plan seems to be in play. We're going to have greater Damascus as the initial outcome.
Right. That's right. But Greater Damascus, it just isn't sustainable because if you don't have a land bridge to survive, then that's it. I mean, it's just going to collapse. So I don't think that maybe just be a preliminary, but that cannot go. So in fact, you will have the black flags flying.
Well, I mean, okay, that's where we stand right now. I mean, in West Asia, the Greater Middle East, whatever you want to call it, talk is particularly cheap. Okay, so we'll see.
Okay, we will see, but
Tehran has made it clear that they will not let Damascus fall. So we'll see if those words have any meaning. I mean, that was said, that was said 8 years ago. Okay, does that stand? We're going to find out.
well, that's it. But that was said 8 years ago. A lot of things have happened during the past 8 years, and then but we have to be realistic and say, well, that it was touch and go in 2015, 2016 whether Bashar al-Assad will survive, and he's not able to call on the forces that he was able to call on then. I doubt very much whether Iran is going to make a major military commitment, sending in its forces, which is what it will have to do in order to secure Damascus. I just don't think Iran's going to do it. So it was, yes, they could talk about it then, but that was a different time, and and Hezbollah was there, and Russia was there, and so they were all in on it together. Now, I don't see Iran really as taking such a huge risk on behalf of Damascus.
We'll
I mean, I'd
see.
like to think that he will, but I have to be very skeptical that they'll do it.
We're realists here, but I mean, it's very interesting. It was only like 2 weeks ago, maybe less than, we had Vanessa Beeley on, and she gave us
Right.
foreshadowing of what's going on right now. It was very, very interesting. And if I read her well, she was her interpretation. It was pretty grim. So
Yes. Yes, that's exactly right.
this is where we are right now. The more news that comes in, the worse it gets. I'm sorry, everyone.
Exactly.
Okay?
We should also say, by the by, is the scum, the low life vermin that are present in so many of the forums
Yeah, the
expressing their
bottom
views,
feeders. Yeah, the bottom.
and the people, the Douglas Murrays, who talk about Western civilization. Hamas is the enemy of Western civilization. Somehow, where is the threat? These fanatics, these fundamentalist fanatics who are a threat to the Western values. Yet strangely, they seem to support the people who openly threaten Christians, Christianity, yeah, Western values.
These are the people that salute a black flag. Isn't that amazing, everyone? Yeah. That's Western values right there. No, it's Western cynicism, values, civilization. This is all a front for hegemony, for violence, and it has nothing to do with the well-being of any people whatsoever. I mean, here we get how many wars do we have going on right now in this region? Okay, and everybody doesn't. They keep saying there's a ceasefire in Lebanon. I don't see it. Do you see it,
No,
George?
I mean, no. It's another one of these things whereby the media talk about ceasefire, and then every time Israel pummels Lebanon, they say, but by and large, the ceasefire is holding. But every day Israel is pummeling Lebanon, but the ceasefire is holding. It's like mostly peaceful. These demonstrations are mostly peaceful.
Hezbollah hit the excuse me, Tel Aviv airport. wouldn't be mostly peaceful.
Right,
Okay.
exactly. But apparently, Israel can just do this as a free ride, and they still, yeah, the ceasefire is mostly holding. So yeah, obviously they're going to continue with this. But again, this is this is quite grim. And I think during the next coming week, I think we're going to talk more about Syria with guests who are going to come on the gaggle. But Peter Ford, the former UK ambassador to Syria, issued quite a grim statement today. I mean, definitely not a no,
And
like
Peter
us. I
Ford
think he doesn't see that this is going to have a good outcome.
and Peter Ford is an individual, actually a force of nature by himself that George and I very much look up to. So, not the usual bottom feeders of Think Tankistan and all of these people. Well, these people are awful.
That's
Okay.
right. We have to
Anyway,
always distinguish him from Richard Ford, who was a former U.S. but he's a U.S. ambassador to Syria. Now he was a
I've
very
had him
bad
on my
guy.
program a number of times. This was years ago, and I'll tell you how forceful his arguments were. Is that I had to decide to counter and demolish his arguments, but at the risk of elder abuse. So I refrained, okay, because it just didn't seem right, okay. But his these arguments, these very tired arguments that these people make, but they never get any pushback. When they get pushback, they're just demolished, okay. Um, uh, this is what happens with these people. Anyway, George and I keep an eye on this. Obviously, this one well, I can't say it came out of the blue, but I mean the intensity and the velocity of it has really surprised me.
No, and it's an object lesson. You never want to leave unfinished conflicts because they're going to blow up in your face. Everything may be good for a year or 2 years, but if it's unfinished, you can bet that the West is preparing to relaunch an offensive. They're not just sitting still, they're preparing and they're going to seize their moment to relaunch their offensive.
You're talking about Syria, or you're talking about Ukraine?
I'm talking about both.
You're talking about both. Absolutely. All right, everybody. This is the Gaggle with Peter and George. We're on Locals, so please go to thegaggle.locals.com. We're doing our a series of weekly wraps here because in many parts of the world, Monday is the last day of the week. In the West, it's people think it's Sunday, but we're going to take Sunday as the end of the week. Tomorrow we'll have live stream, and George goes back solo on Tuesday.
Exactly. So 10 a.m. Eastern time for our live stream. Please join us. Come with comments and excellent questions. We love stimulating, thoughtful questions. They provoke us. They make us think. So please have some questions prepared for us for tomorrow. And then on Tuesday, 3 p.m. Eastern time, I do my solo. In the meantime, we have to deal with this ferocious hound who's very, very unhappy.
You don't want to take on Big Chihuahua, everybody.
Exactly. He said, "I've had it up to here with the tip jar situation. Something has to be done. Something has to break." So, in order to keep him calm, please, if you have a few bob in your pocket, behind the sofa cushion, anywhere, whip them out, dunk them into the tip jar. We're very grateful for all of your help, friendship, and support. The more you're able to donate, the more of these videos we can make, the more we can improve on the technology. And above all, we have to be able to address this buddy and apple problem, which it's too vexing for us. So remember, if you
Mere
like the
mortals.
gaggle, for us mortals, exactly. So remember, if you like the gaggle, please like, share, and subscribe. See you soon. Bye-bye.